Welcome to the Awakened Human Podcast, the place to be for highly progressive yet extremely grounded intuitive guidance, energetic support, metaphysical tools, and higher consciousness for highly successful, ambitious, soul-centered visionaries and leaders like you who want to make a global impact and achieve your highest fulfillment by aligning with your soul's true divine agenda and your role in God's source creators, the divine's plan for lighted creation, and by utilizing your divine gifts, talents, and abilities from the higher realms. We do this by working with the non-physical realms of higher guidance, energy, intuition, and powerful metaphysical tools for healing and transformation. We understand that the real change and transformation that's being called for on planet Earth and in our own lives and our own businesses doesn't come from outside of us, and it doesn't come from the top or from the bottom, but rather from within. And that the change that we desire to experience in our lives and in our world requires us to change from the inside. I'm your host, Laurie España. I'm a best-selling author, spiritual catalyst, intuitive, energy worker, ascension guide, multidimensional channel, animal communicator, visionary, lightworker, and luminary. I have dedicated my entire professional life to helping thousands and thousands of humans and animals all over the world in service and contribution to the light, which is the expansion, the upliftment, the evolution of humanity, to awaken, to uplift, and to align with our true divine source, which exists within each and every one of us. It is my passion, joy, and purpose to share this information, energy, and consciousness with you. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing time with me. Let's get started. Well, hello and welcome back to the Awakened Elevated Human. I'm your host, Laurie España. It's great to be with you here today. Thank you so much for joining, for listening, for participating, for sharing. Thank you for being you, magnificent you. Today, we're going to talk about really awakening your divine intuition. And I am excited about this topic because I think for too long, too many people have not realized how much is available to you and possible for you in terms of working with your own divine intuition. And I know last podcast, we talked a lot about working with your higher self, which is certainly part of working with your intuition. And if you haven't listened to that episode, please do, because it's a fundamental piece of working with your own intuition is working with your own higher self. That is part of where and how you work with your own intuition. But that said, I want to expand on this, working with your intuitive gifts, talents, abilities, and what they are and why they're real and really how to use them. And I want to make sure that I'll go into this lots of times in the future because there's so many parts about working with your intuition and all of the abilities that you have. It's infinite, it's endless. But today, for the purposes of just baseline, I really want to help you understand that this is available to you. And this is the stuff I'm going to cover today is stuff that I've taught for years and years in all of my intro level classes about developing your intuition, about developing your ability to be telepathic, about developing your ability to communicate as a medium, which is essentially to work with people who have crossed over, AKA loved ones and other beings in the non-physical who have transitioned out of the physical body and into the non-physical, animals, humans, or other, telepathically communicating with other, if you're willing to go here with me, extraterrestrials, off-planet beings, and more. Everyone's a healer. I've said that for so many years. We are all healers. We all have the capacity to heal ourselves of physical issues, of emotional issues, traumas, mental imbalances. We all have this within us. So this is where we're going to start with today, is just really understanding that it is available to you. And it requires you to be willing to participate. It requires you to be willing to engage. It's not something that will happen automatically. Although for some people it can, And for some people will say that it did happen for them automatically. I have some of that because I was working with DNA activations for so long that it's part of what happened with that. I mean, I was doing stuff before the DNA activations, but that definitely was huge and fundamental in bringing on more of my gifts because they were stored in the DNA, because our DNA stores what we're here to bring forward. I'll do a whole podcast on the DNA in the future, but let's stick with the intuition for now and your intuitive abilities. We'll cover the DNA a little bit today. So let's get started. Here's the thing. We all have these gifts. Let me give the scientific, factual evidence so that you can understand that it is available to you and it is possible for you. And it's not something that's available to some and not others. Contrary to what some people will say or what a lot of people believe, everyone has the ability to develop and cultivate their intuitive abilities. Will everybody make the choices required to do that? No, not everybody's going to choose it. Does everybody have a natural calling towards it? No, not necessarily. But does everybody have the capacity and the potential? Yes. And this is what we're going to discuss today. And if you consciously choose it, is it possible and available for you? Yes. And if you do what it takes and is required, yes. So let's go and dive into that. First, let's talk about the science of it. And I've shared this so many times. So for me, this is just basic fact. You have an area of your brain stored in the center rear portion of your brain known as the pineal gland and also the pituitary gland. These two glands are master glands. They're stored inside of what's called the cave of Brahma. This is all science, right? Those master glands are highly calcified in most humans, primarily from things like GMOs, artificial sweeteners, sugars, chemicals, pharmaceutical drugs, fluoride, toxic chemicals, fertilizers, fake fertilizers, they just sprayed. It drove me crazy. In one of the communities where I live, in the community, there's a golf course, and they sprayed the worst chemical, DEET, which is outlawed in lots of states. And they sprayed it all over the golf course. In a matter of hours, the entire golf course that was once nice and green turned brown. It's ridiculous, these people. I mean, that company that created that stuff, Monsanto, had to dissolve itself because it just was known as the death company. I was actually interviewed by this is a diversion, right? By someone, a PR guy from the Monsanto Corporation. And I had driven past Monsanto Corp in Wyoming when I was driving cross country, and for miles there was just death. I was like, what is that? That place, it was so dark. I couldn't see anything. There was just a huge wall of black tar. That's what their walls are made up of on that property. And I just was driving for miles past these. I'm like, what is that there? It's just nothing but death in there. Oh my God, the energy in there is so bad. I was in so much, I couldn't even believe it because I loved Wyoming. There was just so much beautiful expansiveness there. It was one of my favorite adventures that I went on. And I got to a point where there was these gated gates and they had all these signs, do not enter, cameras everywhere. And I stopped and I saw it. It was Monsanto Corp. So they created these chemical fertilizers. All right, I'm diverting myself. Anyway, that company was dissolved because it was just death in a company. It was absorbed by Bayer, the pharmaceutical drug company that creates aspirin, right? But they're not using that name anymore because it was just so bad. Anyway, these toxic chemicals have calcified the brain, calcified these two extrasensory glands in the center of the brain. Now, don't get afraid because they can be decalcified. There's nothing that's not healable, especially those areas of the brain. Very healable. They have the capacity to rebuild, regenerate, regrow. And maybe science hasn't measured that. I don't know, but I know that psychically and as a spiritual healer. So we can decalcify them. But those extrasensory glands in the center of the brain are what allow you to see. That's where your clairvoyance can come from if you develop it, your clairaudience. Clairvoyance is the ability to see beyond sight. It's an extrasensory ability to see with the mind. That's what clairvoyance, that's what it is. Clairaudience, to hear with the mind. So hear way beyond regular hearing. That's why I'm always seeking the sound of silence so I can hear the sound of Mother Earth and her beautiful song she sings, a hum. Clairaudience allows you to hear things, right, as an extrasensory ability. There's clairgustance, which allows you to taste. Okay, that's a little bit more than the third eye, but it's linked into that area, which is the two glands we're talking about. All of the clairs, and I could spend time going through all the clairs here, but that area of the brain needs to be decalcified. So humans who don't know that they have this or don't believe that it's possible or have not been able to do it usually need some really good decalcification of that area, which can be also called sixth chakra clearings, although they're not necessarily exactly the same thing. They don't necessarily do the same thing, because the intent to decalcify something is a very clear intent. The intent to open a chakra, or not open, to clear a chakra is something else, right? But they have similar, okay. Next, let's go to the brainwaves, right? So those are all extrasensory abilities linked there. Now let's go to the brainwaves. It's known to humans you have at least 5 brainwaves, and there's ranges. And most humans are using the delta brainwave when we sleep, the beta brainwave when we're awake. And this beta brainwave is highly aggravated state for most people. They're speeding out, right? They're always on a speeding out kind of energy, especially if there are people who take things like any form of adrenaline type of drink, those coffee drinks that are loaded with extra caffeine, or any form of adrenaline drug that are often given to children with ADD. Ritalin, those kinds of adrenaline types of drugs that they say help you focus, but they're really a form of speed, various degrees of some form of speed, right? That messes with that brainwave, that messes with your third eye, the pineal pituitary, but they're in such an aggravated brainwave state, also from watching commercials and the news. So they're really locked in that beta sort of, and they'll talk, people who talk very fast. So if I was just talking really fast and telling you really fast like this, you would really understand, like, this is a really aggravated brainwave state, right? And I'm using a different part of my brain to do this. Making the point here, right? That's a beta. When you're talking to someone who talks so fast and you get exhausted and your brain just is like telling them slow down. Okay, I exaggerated to make the point, but that's beta, right? Delta when you sleep, beta when you're active and alert. Now, most people, when they do meditation, they go into an alpha. So a meditative state, that's a very light state of meditation, gazing, looking at the water or at the horizon, or visualization. Let's visualize a beautiful pond. Let's visualize a meadow. Those kinds of meditations. Let's visualize your guides coming in. Visualize a bright light coming in and down. That's alpha brainwave state. You're still using your brain, and you are using a rational part of your brain to create a state of peace and harmony. And the alpha brainwave just pretty much says yes. So if it's in a state of relaxation, it'll just say yes, which is, most commercials attempt to get you into that state, like pharmaceutical drug commercials. They play some nice music or butterflies and rainbows, or they show an image with some music of people playing football and isn't life wonderful? And they put you in that nice, a suggestive brainwave state. So the brain says, yes. And then they'll tell you need to call your doctor to check if you have some kind of disease and to take some kind of medication. And then they'll throw you into a schism brainwave state, a deep beta, may cause death, may cause suicide, may cause right? So the brain gets schismed, and then that creates a state of anxiety or stress, right? So this is known, research. That's where most people are hanging out. So if you're in an alpha brainwave state and you're not being kind of brainwashed, you're enjoying life. Life is good. You're peaceful. You're relaxing. That's awesome. That's where most people meditate. Yoga will bring around, if you really get lucky, like yoga can bring about yoga brain, because you open certain energy centers and the brain gets flooded with neurochemicals that make you feel very peaceful, calm, and relaxed. We're dipping now into theta. So theta brainwave is the brainwave where there is high alert, high aware, but very high peace, very calm, not agitated. So the awareness allows for the exchange of information or the receiving of awareness without being agitated or irritated or needing to think. It's not using a rational brain in the same way. And it's not irrational. It's very calm, relaxed, and aware. That's theta. And then, of course, there's gamma, which is incredibly advanced and progressed. When I'm channeling, I'm in a gamma brainwave state. There is so much peace in my field and yet incredible information at a very fast pace to the point of no processing needed. I have incredible amounts of connection, multiple conversations with multiple beings in the non-physical going on all at the same time. It is multitasking for the brain on steroids. And yet I'm in total peace and relaxation. So zoned, right? And from that state, by the way, I can bend spoons. There's lots of things you can do to affect the physical reality. You can affect the whole of humanity in that state as well. Once you really learn how to do it, and the way I do it would only be in accordance with God's will. Like I would never do anything that would be harmful or detrimental, but that's part of how I've developed these gifts is by working in collaboration, right? But we all can access those brainwave frequencies, and those are where extrasensory abilities take place in addition to this third eye area. There's no one that can't do it or can't learn it. It's not restricted from anybody or kept from anybody. It's a matter of choice to start to develop and cultivate it. And it's way easier than you think and way more enjoyable than the way we do things in the old paradigm, which is all about like struggling to accomplish things and working so hard and overdoing everything, doing to the point of excess. All right. And all that overdoing is just overuse of the brain that makes people develop that anxiety and get into those patterns in their brain where they are just constantly on these high alert states of puts them into states of survival modes, right? That's just the brain frequencies that are not really harmonized and balanced. Okay. Now, what other extrasensory abilities? Also, let's talk about the major chakra centers, which is really important, right? Western science and Western medicine and Western thinking does not recognize those major chakra centers that we have, which in fact, we have at least 108 chakras that I'm aware of. I believe there's at least 144, but I am 100% certain of 108. They're not all in the body, right? But they are all within the energy field of the individual. Now, those chakra centers, now, even if you just look at the primary 7 that are in the body, the primary 7, there's more than that, right? At the base or root of the spine, that's the root chakra, that controls, that is an energy center. And even though Western medical doctor would deny that energy center, which is connected to the colon and connected to the way you excrete bodily waste, that is an important energy center. And if things aren't working well there, you're having problems, right? So this energy center on a metaphysical plane includes the Kundalini, which Western science hasn't studied and doesn't know or doesn't acknowledge. But that Kundalini energy is well known in spiritual communities and energetic communities. And when that Kundalini is activated, watch out. I will never forget the euphoria when my Kundalini was spontaneously activated while living in Maui. I was just playing with energy, learning how to work with energy, and the Kundalini got activated. And I was so oblivious that that's what happened. But there was like an arts and crafts table downstairs from the room where we were, and we were on a break. And I went to that arts and crafts table and I was picking up like the rocks. They were painted rocks. And I was examining them as I was in love with these rocks. And I'm sure that the woman at the table thought I was high or stoned or something. But it was like I was in love, and I could have spent an hour just with the rock, like the grooves of the rock and the colors she had painted and the artistic design. I was like beyond enamored. Whole body and the capacity for whole body orgasm. This is not even, it's beyond sex. It's not even anything we experience in the human world. The whole body goes into spontaneous orgasmic experience that just is so beyond pleasure. And there's nothing sexual about it. It's just a kind of full body. Okay, that's all stored in the root chakra. Also stored in the root chakra is people's life plans and their sense of safety and survival. So, for example, if the whole world is going through a fear of death issue, such as what happened in 2020 with COVID, their blocked root chakras is going to activate all that fear. And what are they going to do? They're going to unconsciously go out and search for toilet paper. Okay, do you guys remember this? I hope you do. Because that is an indication of blocked chakras, blocked by fear of survival. Right? Okay, I can go on with this, but I think if a person doesn't know their life plan and is constantly searching for their mission or their purpose, that's an indication of a blocked root chakra. If they have colon issues, colon cancer, anything like that, right? Now, I'm not going to go through every chakra center here, but I can do that in another podcast. But every chakra center has purpose and is linked in to that area. So I'll go through them a little quickly and then we can do it in more depth in another podcast in the future. But reproductive center has to do with balance of feminine and masculine. I was once interviewed by a woman and it was a horror. It was the only interview I ever felt like it was horrible. I swear I was on the call and this woman was such a Puritan and all that kept flashing through my face while I was being interviewed was Salem witch trials. And she was just out to get me. She just had a vendetta and it was a live interview. It was very challenging to navigate. And I could see her reproductive center was entirely blocked. Like it was removed, like she had her reproductive organs removed. And I later found out because I was so shocked by the podcast. Like I didn't understand, why did this woman come after me? It was just Salem witch trial reality, right? And she had vendetta against all this spiritual stuff. And her whole podcast was about that. And I didn't know it because I have a podcast assistant who books me and she's supposed to pre-screen for whatever reason. I don't mean to even blame her because I didn't know either. Anyway, the point is, great example. She's completely misaligned in her balance in her reproductive center. She wasn't really being fair. That is all reproductive center stuff. Imbalance, unfairness, misalignment with gender identity, not knowing, like feminine, masculine, gender confusion can hang out there. If someone is really confused, it's not meant to be that way, right? We're meant to have clarity about who we are or choose consciously. All right, there's a lot more depth to this, of course, because this is not about the chakras, but when these chakras are blocked, we have issues. And of course, on the physical level, it'll show up on all kinds of health issues in that energy center. Okay, so belly center or solar plexus region is another one of those energy centers. When it's blocked, people will have all kinds of gastrointestinal disorders or liver, kidneys, pancreas, all those physical issues in that area of the body. And on the relationship issues, they'll have personal power struggles, power struggle dynamics, self-confidence, self-worth, all that stuff, self-esteem, self-value, all kinds of issues sit there. And humans accumulate energy in these areas because they're unconscious about how energy works. They're unconscious about using their own energy and how to clear this stuff out. It's not something we're taught in mainstream ideology. We're not taught it in school. We're taught to poo-poo it. We're taught to think of it as woo-woo. And this is why we're in such a dysfunctional society. And this is why we're not functioning at our ideal and optimal states of health and well-being, mental, emotional, physical, energetic, right? But all of these chakras also have to do with choices we make. The choice to move forward in life can be around the hip area and linked into the chakra center. So the choice to live our best life, the choice to take appropriate action. If we have blockages in our field, our energy field, we're not going to do that. And then we're not able to access our divine intuition. Because intuition comes through the chakra centers just as much as it comes through the brain and the various places in the brain. One of the big blockages in the brain is the amygdala. And that stores up all kinds of fear in the brain. That can be cleared. I clear it in my Sacred Visionary mentorship. We have processes. It's amazing how quickly and easily that stuff can be cleared. But not if people don't know about it. And when that's cleared, what comes in? Light and consciousness, your higher self, your divine extrasensory abilities. All of these chakra centers that I'm talking about here, let's get to the heart, right? The heart is obviously a major chakra center. And that major energy center, if it's blocked, people have heart attacks, heart failure, congestive heart failure, all kinds of other things. And they're not able to give and receive love the way that they're truly meant to, the way they're truly capable. Because the truth is, we are all made of love. We're magnificent beings capable of just the most, we don't even know our infinite potential, our limitless potential. The heart chakra has to be cleared. And when you're in the presence of someone who's not really fully in their heart chakra, because you just don't feel any warmth from them, you don't feel any emotional connection, or even emotional connection isn't really the right way to say it, but just that sense of care or compassion or connection that most humans are really looking for. Not everybody is, because if their heart chakra is really blocked, they're going to have problems in their romantic life. They're going to have problems in their relationships, just reproductive centers, relationships, but so is heart chakra, because that's about our capacity to connect with other beings, with the reality we live in, to have love, to give and receive love, to experience being loved, feeling loved, sharing love and compassion and care and kindness and a lot of those virtuous behaviors that we desire. So you can deny that the chakra exists, but this is real stuff. And when that opens, your ability to connect with others in the physical realm and in the non-physical realm will expand exponentially, including angels and other beings, because the frequency bandwidth where they are is a vibrational bandwidth that is equal to or greater than love, equal to or greater than compassion, equal to or greater than kindness, equal or greater to those frequencies, care, nurturing. That's why we're so attracted to angels and other benevolent beings, ascended masters, because they're at that frequency. You can only access that frequency truly, truly through the heart center, because the heart center really is a portal to higher realms, to non-physical realms. This is not known in the physical world, not studied scientifically, of course, but that energy center is. And you have that energy center. And that is real, and no one can deny it. And I could take a pendulum and put it over my heart, and you'd see how wide that pendulum spins. And I could put it over the heart of someone who has heart problems. Doesn't mean they're not capable of love. Doesn't mean they're not capable of all those things. Doesn't mean it's not possible for them. But because their center is blocked, that pendulum won't move. I've done it a gazillion times. It's amazing, right? And so when you really start to realize that this stuff is real, and of course the other major centers, right, beyond the heart center, throat. If this area is blocked, people aren't safe. They don't have trust. They don't know how to speak authentically, or they have trouble being or feeling authentic. If you're an entrepreneur looking for your authentic voice or your authentic message, and this area is blocked, that will be quite challenging for you. That will be not an easy thing, right? And then you'll have trouble authentically expressing yourself, authentically speaking truth, authentically marketing. I mean, you'd have trouble with a podcast, or even if you do, even if you don't feel that you have trouble with that stuff, opening and clearing the heart chakra and the throat chakra is going to allow you to speak from the heart more eloquently. I've had a client, she comes to me, well, most of the time she's come to me in the past for like baby in the womb readings and then working with her baby. And I've watched her as an entrepreneur in the world, and I've seen her struggle. And one of the things I'm beginning to start to work with her on, because I know it will help her so much, is to open her heart more so that what's coming through for her community is more authentically heart-centered communication, because that's the truth of who she is. But it's not being expressed through her, and her audience isn't hearing it, so her business isn't doing as well as it could be doing. And she just never even realized that that was available to her. And she's into the woo. She came to me for baby readings. So it's amazing how when we open this, more of our intuition comes through. The divinity that we are, how we're meant to be and embody. More light comes through when we clear these things, right? I talked about the third eye. I say the skin is obviously a major sensory organ. It's the largest organ of the body. And when your skin is clear, and by the way, chemical substances and chemicals put on the skin, I see it all the time living in Florida. People spray those chemicals to block them from the sun, UV rays. And instead, what happens is the sun UV rays bakes the chemicals into their skin. It's worse. It's worse than the natural light of the sun to bake those chemicals in. And it shuts them down. So of course they can't use their skin as for the full sensory abilities that the skin can offer, because your skin can really communicate. This is why people will go, oh, I got goosebumps. Oh, I've got goose pimples. Oh, my hairs are standing up, right? Because their skin is notifying them, hey, pay attention to what's going on here. Hey, be alert. Right? Now, other than that, I want to say a couple other things. Your vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in the nervous system, right? Most people, that vagus nerve is just overloaded with energetic density, inertia, stress, etc. It's tightened. It's not allowing for the flow. But when we learn to work with that, obviously we're relaxing the nervous system, allowing for more light and lightness of being to come in. Now, all of these things I've talked about, and there's more than this, but for the purpose of today, I'm going to start to wrap because, as I said, this is by no means the whole story. But this is all the science behind it of how you can cultivate and develop that. Overall, these are all scientific aspects of why this is real and how we can all start to open these potentials within us. And as we clear out these aspects of us, we allow for more light and consciousness to flow through. This is not woo-woo. This is real, right? I remember when I was little, I had this dream. I always wanted to be smart. I was married, which many of you may have heard this at one point in my history, where I just thought then husband was so smart. Now, when I think back, I see it totally differently. But at that time, I thought he was so smart. And my sister was married to he was a Sagittarius. They were both Sages. And they just seemed so smart. And I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be so smart. And I didn't think I was. I really didn't think that I was very smart. Years later, I had my astrology done and I found out that I was a Sag rising. To this day, to me, this is a chicken and egg. I really don't know if I willed myself to become a Sag and it just showed up, or if I always was. Okay, that might be too out there for some of you, but when you understand that linear time isn't real, that's another conversation for another time. Yeah, I don't know. But in any case, now I see myself as I feel so brilliant in terms of intelligence beyond and wise, intelligence beyond study or learning. And I know that we all have this within us because I cultivated it. I developed it over time. And by using the extrasensory abilities, this is part of how I did it. I'm going to add two more things and then I'm going to start to wrap. I mentioned the DNA earlier. That's important. We all have unique DNA within us. And we know this scientifically, that there are at least 12 strands of studied DNA that are physical. There's way more than that, way more. But those are still etheric and not seen scientifically. So previously, we thought that we only were using 2 strands that was reserved for genetics and ancestral lineage, right? And now we know that there's at least the additional 10 strands that science is studying that they used to call dormant, but they know it's not dormant. And they just don't entirely understand what it's for. Well, those strands have been found by science because we've been working to anchor them into physical for so many years, right? I know I've been doing that work for so many years, DNA activations. But what's in that DNA is your potential waiting to be activated, waiting to be awakened for you. No one else can do that for you. It's entirely based on your free will to choose it. And typically once is not enough, but once makes a world of difference. And every time you do it, it gets more and more. And I'm sure that that is so much of where so much of my extrasensory knowledge and abilities came from, because I started activating it in my own DNA. Last but not least, I'll say our ability to connect with beings in the non-physical world and to work with them. In my earlier stages, I had so many beings coming to me. I'll never forget, in my earlier stages of learning, I had this being that used to come to me over and over again. So I had this being that would come to me over and over again. He'd just come and I'd see this sort of like fluttery yellow type of light, like a butterfly fluttery light. I just see it come across my eyes from the peripheral through my lens and past. It was very fast and fleeting and yet very palpable, very, very present. And then with that, I'd hear these words, "I am Bartholomew." And I'd be like, in the beginning, I'd be like, "Oh, this is so cool. Oh my God. Like, who is this Bartholomew?" But it would come and it would go. It would come and it would go. And after a while, I got annoyed. I'd be like, "Don't bother coming back anymore if you're not going to do anything or tell me anything. Like, what's the point?" Yeah, this is it. Then it started calling my divine team used to call me a divine brat for a lot of years, playing with me, right? Jesting. But anyway, this being was just there to teach me about vibration and energy and light. That's it. Just by being, right? But it took me years to learn that, to realize that. Now, there's lots of beings in the non-physical who can also help us learn. Sometimes it's something like that. Other times it's just infinite potentials. And they can teach us all kinds of things. And when we start learning to work with them, there's so many ways they can help us improve our lives. Just recently, I was looking at something astrological and some really big change that's ahead for humanity. And I was interpreting it slightly through the lens of fear. Not fear, but concern, right? Like, this doesn't look like a great thing for humanity. And so I was inquiring and asking my team, and I was clearly corrected of what it would be, and that it would be a great thing, even though some humans might perceive it through the lens of fear, that it was a doorway into our future and it was going to be beautiful. And I was so happy to have that. I'll share about that on I usually do that in my predictions calls or my channeling calls, but really good stuff ahead. And wow, that was just so wonderful to be able to have that guidance. So the ways that we can work with our intuition and all of our intuitive abilities is endless. I could go on for hours on this topic area, but this is just the baseline of you understanding scientifically the brainwaves you've been using probably haven't been allowing you to fully do it if you don't feel like you have it. You can always continue to grow. It's infinite. The way you're using your third eye, again, your pineal pituitary gland, another example. I didn't even talk about the throat area, the hypothalamus. That's another sensory area. The way you're putting chemicals on or in your body, food, supplements, etc., things you're taking into the body are very likely shutting down the physical aspects if you're not able to utilize it. If you feel that you don't have it or think you don't have it, but you have it. All of these parts that I've mentioned are scientifically real parts of us. Your DNA, your dormant DNA, your skin, your heart center, which, by the way, what I didn't mention on the part of the heart center, this is so awesome, right? Is that in the heart center, there is a portal which is known by science. It's not necessarily known and identified through the heart, but it is a known portal. It's like a wormhole, a bridge. It's called the Einstein-Rosen bridge. It's named that. And that portal to other dimensions exists within your heart center. They probably haven't studied it there, but that is the name given to by science. The Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is a wormhole to other dimensions. And physics knows that it exists. Okay, I hope I haven't made you stretch too far for this. I hope I've done a good enough job here of explaining to you that these are parts of who you are. They are not denied, but you are the one who has to open and access them by your free will choice. And you have to cultivate it and develop it within yourself. It's not hard. In fact, it's fun. And if you have a calling to it, it's not only fun, it's so wonderful because you start realizing your capacity and your potential, and that's exciting. And it strengthens your abilities. And by the way, if you're a person who does long for deep and rich and fulfilling relationships, you start realizing how people want this more and are gravitated to it. And it makes you a more likable person because you're developing capacity within yourself, in some cases, to love more, to be kinder, to be more virtuous, right? To be more compassionate, more understanding, more free, all of those great virtuous behaviors, which we haven't necessarily addressed today. But it does improve the quality of your relationships to do this work. And it will improve your self-love, your self-care, of course. And it will improve your ability to work with the non-physical to improve the quality of your life and to improve your business as well. It's just the potentials are limitless. And I wish I had more time to go into the other areas, but these are the basic areas, the core areas. And once you start realizing this is within you, nothing can stop you if you choose it. I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to sign off for now and wish you your best. We will, of course, explore much more of this in the future and in future episodes. But for now, I'll sign off and say farewell and bid you adieu. I wish you your most benevolent best. Farewell for now. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening today. If you loved the show and if you benefited in any way, if it helped you to up-level or expand your consciousness, if you gained any new insights or ideas, if it made you think or become more aware, or if there were some strategies or intuition that you may have benefited from in any way, would you please do me two easy and simple favors? First, if you would be willing to leave a review, it would mean the world to me. I'd be so grateful. And second, if you're willing to share this show with anyone else who would benefit, you can either post it on your social media or just email it to someone and share it with another person or any other people. It would be so awesome. This kind of thing is so helpful in expanding consciousness on the planet and helping others to benefit from this kind of teaching, which just simply isn't generally readily available in the mainstream. So sharing it really helps others benefit and helps our planet evolve and awaken. Plus, expressing gratitude and generosity in this way will also expand your capacity to give and receive even more. Either way, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for participating and for sharing, and overall, just for being the magnificent, the spectacular, the brilliant, the fabulous, the wonderful you that you truly are, and for allowing yourself to be the very best version of you today and every day. All my love and gratitude to you.